There are so many things in life that make it too easy to slide right into a state of resentment. When you have childhood PTSD, there's this feeling of dysregulated irritation, and it can make a person very harsh and critical. And if you don't have a way to release that, you can end up believing that other people are doing it to you, and what comes out of your mouth is blame. You're blaming people in your life. You're hitting them with resentment about it. It's most likely to come out towards the people who love you the most. And somewhere inside, we know that we're doing something wrong when we do that, and then we end up making up stories about why it's necessary to feel that way, why we have to tell these stories, why it's justified. And some people really are abusive, and your anger is necessary to propel you out of that situation and to get a boundary up. But sometimes the pain of things that happened in the past will make you resentful and cruel to people when it's not justified. They don't deserve it. So I have a letter today from someone I'll call Jill, and she writes, I'm divorced, 47 years old, 4-year-old son, not by my ex-husband. I'm the youngest of 3 with a supportive family. My parents split when I was in 1st or 2nd grade, yet I maintained a loving relationship with my dad. Got the fairy pencil. I'll be circling things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's just read through and see what Jill's saying. My parents didn't hide any arguments from us, just the truth about the downfall of their marriage, and it turned out that Dad cheated multiple times and emotionally abused Mom. I've lived away from home for 10 years and plan to move back home and in with my mother and her husband, not my dad, this summer until I can save money. My mother is the poster child for codependence, low self-esteem, people pleasers, and can use passive-aggressive behaviors at the drop of a hat. My ultimate trigger is her indecisiveness. She can't even place an order at a fast food drive without getting dysregulated. I'm now realizing she may have CPTSD, as she's recently shared childhood and relationship traumas with me. I've seen her being dysregulated for years, yet I never understood what was happening. My mother is remarried to the man that came to live with us after my dad left. His presence made my siblings and me uncomfortable, and my mother would force us to speak to him, saying she only wants us to be polite and respectful. She's big on manners and appearances. She once threatened to take my new school clothes back to the store if I didn't say goodbye to him one night. This dynamic created such pain within our home that my sister left during middle school to live with my dad. I never asked what really happened because no one ever talked about these things. This man would bounce in and out of our home for years, and finally, when I was 26 years old, my mother announced she was marrying him. Why was this happening again? He had nothing to show for his life. No job, car, or a place to live. He was disabled, ex-drug addict living with his mother. I accepted her decision and tried to support her, as no one in the family liked him or approved of this marriage. Fast forward to now, and they're still married, and now he's sick. Dementia, CPOD, and on oxygen. My mother still holds on to this fantasy of us being what I call the Brady Bunch family. I've shared with her that if the Lord Jesus came to earth and told my sister to be friends with her husband, she would not. That's how much hatred is there. My mom and I have always and still do have a special bond, yet I don't want to become her emotional bestie, her handywoman, her maid, chef, therapist, hairdresser, or have a fake friendship with her husband. I know nothing about him, not even his middle name. She also has some jealousy tendencies that have irritated me for years, yet she denies them. If I have a new hairdo or a new dress, I recently lost 70 pounds, she will say comments like, "Ooh, I want that too," or "Can you help me lose weight?" She also has rules for her home and has a bad habit of micromanaging. She also has expressed that she doesn't understand why my siblings and I can't see she needs help around the house. I'm all for pitching in, but her demands, entitled mindset, and behaviors can trigger my own CPTSD symptoms to new heights. I'm a carbon copy of her, minus the indecisiveness and micromanagement. And I don't want to be made guilty for living my life. That is, going out on weekends, talking on the phone after 9 p.m., or not wanting to cook for her husband like we're one big happy family. Mom is so excited for my son and me to come home. Her retirement, the pandemic, her bad knees, and stress from being caretaker to her sick husband have all caused her to be isolated way too long. I want to enjoy my time with her while I'm there. However, I'm just starting my own healing journey, and I've incorporated the daily practice, that's the thing I teach, into my life, and I'm finding awesome results with it. I'm noticing triggers and dysregulation, and I'm using the tools to calm them down. How do I set healthy, age-appropriate boundaries with her, as she is big on children being respectful and honoring to their parents? I don't want a repeat of Christmas a few years back when she passive-aggressively stated that she did so much for us. I stepped in as I'm grateful for all she does and told her to go lay down, I'll clean up. She ignored me and continued to help out, micromanage, by telling me how to sweep the floor. Later that evening, I walked into her room with a piece of cake, and instead of her asking right out if I could bring her a piece, she said, "Ooh, I want some cake too." She said it in a childlike voice. I was so triggered I snapped, which made her snap back and shut down. Also, her husband approached my sister and asked if they could be friends. He's in his 70s and is still trying to push a connection because of my mother. Side note, I phoned her on Father's Day. I was in my 30s, and she and hubby picked up at the same time. And before I could say hi, she cuts me off and says, "You didn't say Happy Father's Day, Jill." Well, you could imagine my emotional flashback. Please help me before I lose it. So, a little after thing here. I wrote to Jill. I read this letter, and I was very intrigued by it. I literally could not hear what the problem was. And I asked, I said, why is there so much animosity towards your mom's husband? Did he abuse you? Because it seemed to me like that was the missing piece, like there was some reason why everybody was like this. And Jill answered, our hatred towards him is that my sister and I never refer to him as stepfather. It's so silly, yet I won't let it go. He was not abusive toward me in any way. He was verbally argumentative toward my sister from what I saw and heard as a child. The animosity toward him was, 1, he wasn't our dad. We adored our dad because Mom kept the real him to herself. 2, he wasn't good enough. No job, car, home, beneath her standards in our eyes. No education or social graces, etc. 3, Mom was forcing us to have a relationship or friendship with him and guilting us if we didn't. She justifies this even now by saying, I only want you to be respectful and polite. You're so rude and inconsiderate. I hope this helps, says Jill. Yes, okay, I think I've got an answer for you. I'm going to read through again, Jill, and I'm going to see if I can help you with this. Okay, first of all, thank you for writing. Thanks for getting help with this. I think something must have been nagging you that, I don't know, the reason you can't get clear about this is because you're not seeing it clearly. That's my opinion. And I'm not sure you're going to like what I'm going to have to say. Now, usually I rush in and I defend people. But in this situation, this feels like a narrative you're using. And I'll tell you why. So, all right, you're divorced, you're 47, and you have a 4-year-old kid, not by ex-husband. You're the youngest of 3. Parents split when you were in 1st or 2nd grade. What's that, 6 or 7 years old? Yet you maintained a loving relationship with your dad. That's good. But evidently your mom raised the kids, the 3 kids, mostly on her own. Parents didn't hide any arguments, so there was a lot of fighting, but they never told you until you were an adult that the marriage came apart because your dad was cheating and was emotionally abusive. So I think that's really appropriate that they didn't tell you that. It's not appropriate to tell kids something that they didn't know. And it's also not appropriate for somebody to badmouth the other parent. So it sounds like your naivete about there being a problem was good. That was a favor they did for you. But it's this thing where you didn't accept it. It sounds like maybe you blamed your mom for the divorce. And I think that can happen. So I'm the child of divorce. My parents divorced when I was 7, and I was heartbroken about it, but it was necessary and right. They fought all the time. And then my kids, I got divorced with their dad when they were 1 and 4. They were really young. And I knew the marriage wasn't going to work out, but I probably wouldn't have ended it right then. He did. But it was terrible, and we fought in front of the kids, the same thing. Very bad for kids. I regret it very much, and I'm really, really grateful that we've repaired that relationship and, done our best mutually to marry other people who also love the kids and to create sort of an extended family, a Brady Bunch family, if you will. I've lived away from home for 10 years and plan to move back home. So hold on, I'm just doing the math. You're 47, you lived at home when you were 37, so that's unusual to live at home that long. Or maybe you were home for a spell. But as an adult, moving home is it's unusual, it's a big thing. and you're moving home again at 47 and plan to move back home with your mother and her husband this summer so you can save money. You'll be there with your kid too. That's amazing that they will help you do that. I just want to say, like, you're so lucky. You want to save money, and they will actually let you stay there, especially after all this like drama and hardship and bad feeling. My mother's a poster child for codependence, low self-esteem, people pleasers, and can use passive-aggressive behavior at the drop of a hat. Your ultimate trigger, you say, Jill, is her indecisiveness. She can't even place an order at a fast food drive without getting dysregulated. You know what? I used to be like that too. And I've been around other people who were severely abused who couldn't even order off a menu without getting completely flustered. It's a sign of abuse, Jill. It's not like somebody being a bad person. It's a sign of abuse. And so first, I just want to say, when you're in the presence of somebody getting dysregulated, I have videos for that. But one of the things that you can do is be a peaceful presence and not hurry them and not put negative pressure on them or criticism on them. A person who gets dysregulated will only get more dysregulated and into shame if they're pressured at times like that. So now that you have the gift of knowing what CPTSD is and what dysregulation is, you have the opportunity to reflect patience and kindness towards her when she gets like that. Everything you're saying about the codependence, the people-pleasing, even the passive aggression, although the examples you gave me of passive aggression, I couldn't see it. But let's just assume you're right. You know, she can't really say things directly when she's not happy. That would bother me too. But I just want to say, like, it's classic for somebody who grew up abused. And you didn't say what her childhood was, but I'm going to guess there was a bully and or a very unreliable parent there. Maybe an alcoholic, maybe some violence. She was invalidated. She wasn't listened to. When a person wasn't listened to as a kid, you will often see that coming out as passive aggression or indirect communication, you know, what feels very manipulative. And I'm not trying to defend manipulative behavior. I'm just trying to say, your mom, there's literally nothing in your letter that says your mom's a bad person. She sounds like somebody who has some trauma, and she's been through a hard time. And one of the hard times she's had is that her kids are actually quite unkind to her. So that's where I'm headed with this. Try to bear with me. I have sympathy for you because I know you had a disrupted childhood too. But I think I can help you. I think I can help you to open your heart to life and to the world and to other people here, because there's this wall that you've got up. I can see it. It's a very prickly wall, and it's aimed at your mom and her husband by proxy. I'm now realizing she may have CPTSD, as she has recently shared childhood and relationship traumas with me. I've seen her being dysregulated for years, yet I never understood what was happening. Yeah, now we know. We can have compassion for people. My mother is remarried to the man that came to live with us after my dad left. His presence made my siblings and me uncomfortable, and my mother would force us to speak to him, saying she only wants us to be polite and respectful. All right. I think that being polite and respectful to her boyfriend, then husband, is appropriate. The way that you guys hated him so much, that's why I was like, well, what happened? Did he abuse you? And you're like, no, he didn't in any way. He was argumentative with your sister, but it sounds like that's the most troubled relationship. So that he's just gotten like decades of grief from her. And so if he was argumentative, I can understand why. Now, I'm remarried. My husband is a step-parent to my kids. And I remember when my kids, they were very upset when they found out I had a boyfriend, and we didn't tell them for a year, you know, after we had been dating, or they sort of vaguely knew, but they didn't meet him for a year until we knew that we were serious about dating. We were considering marriage. It was 2 more years before we got engaged, but, you know, we were very consciously moving towards that. And probably, maybe your mom didn't have that, but her dating relationship was going toward marriage. And after her being in an emotionally abusive relationship with your dad who was unfaithful to her, honestly, I'm glad she had somebody to love her and be her companion. That's a blessing. And the complaints that you have about him, I'll read them later, but I just didn't get it. So you were forced to speak with him, but yes, he lived there. And it is very rude and inconsiderate and hostile not to talk to him. And I can't help but ask, if this had anything to do with your dad. It sounds like you had a kind of messed up psychological dynamic of loyalty to your dad, that you could not give your blessings to your mom moving on and having a new relationship, right? Because who she chooses, if he's an ex-drug addict, awesome. An ex-drug addict is like a miracle in its own right. If he didn't work, that's okay. You know, that's okay. Many people don't work. You might not want that for yourself, but she wanted it for herself, and she's the one who has a home for you to come to. I'm just saying, like, you're the one who's not able to save money. She's doing okay. I think when you go stay in somebody else's home, you do live by their rules. And if one of their rules is, come on, be polite and respectful, of course you be polite and respectful. Of course you do. Now, you could force yourself to do that. But I don't think, if you have to force yourself, I don't think you should go there. I think you should be doing the inner work with the daily practice to get free of all this resentment you have that they've done something to you by being together, by carrying on with life in the best way they could. They were not abusive, and they managed to make a life for themselves, and now he's sick. Now he's sick. So this is not a good time for you to come in with drama or anger or anything like that. I'm going to emphasize that strongly. So you say your mom is big on manners and appearances. Okay, well, I don't think she's that into appearances because she's with a guy who doesn't have a job, as you say, and doesn't have fancy things. You're the one who's big on appearances. You're the one who's bothered that he doesn't have this social status. She's big on manners because manners represent kindness. And I think that's completely appropriate. And I just don't think you can ever go wrong by being kind and well-mannered with people. Being kind and polite, it doesn't get in the way of setting boundaries or protecting yourself from abuse or harm in any way. It's just the right way to move through the world. You will never regret interacting with people in a kind manner. That is the best thing. If you can do one thing in this life and you want to contribute positively to the world, be kind. Be kind to people. Be kind especially to the people who are helpless, who are sick, who are not able to work, who have injuries, who are struggling to function. I'm going to guess that your mom's husband also has a traumatic past. It's really common to have an addiction, and it's amazing when somebody gets out of it. I would also speculate that the two of them have some affinity because they've both been through a hard time, and they're both making the best of it. And I think it's pretty amazing that, given the circumstances, that they're letting in one of the children who has never accepted him. I'll just say that if one of my kids were rude or hostile to my husband, I would never let them stay here. My husband is, I've made a commitment, a vow to him, and I stand by him. I have his back. And the same thing with my kids, but I also wouldn't tolerate my husband being terrible to my kids. I wouldn't have married him if he were terrible to my kids. He's kind and polite to my kids. He's generous with them. It's an interesting dynamic, being a step-parent, as much as you don't want to call him that. You were a child when he came along, and so he is that to you. It's not the same as your dad. You're not being disloyal. It's just that you have a child generational role as your mother's child, and he's her husband, and so he has that dynamic with you, and it calls for that sort of respectful behavior. He's married to her. It's his house. It's his house. I think it's great that they help you, and I don't think there's anything wrong with needing help, financial help, but I just think that that it's absolutely necessary to be kind and respectful to the people you're asking to help you. I think it's just flat out. And if you've got this going on towards them, I am going to wager that this is bleeding into the rest of your life, that you're having difficult relationships with men and women and other people, and it's going to be hard. And because you have a kid, I'm just going to implore you, model for your child what it's like to be loving towards others. This is not where anybody's at risk of abuse. It's your beef with him. Well, let's read about what you said about him. Okay, so she's big on manners. She once threatened to take your new school clothes back to the store if you didn't say goodbye to him one night. Oh, Jill, I would have done that too. Not saying goodbye is petulant and childlike. And it sounds like you were a child. They were school clothes. But that's how you teach children to have some manners. It sounds like your mom wasn't very effective at holding the boundary on good behavior because the bad childlike resentment at him not being your dad has continued for decades. That would be typical of a codependent person, to just feel like she has to keep being nice to you even though you keep being mean to her. I'm just going to tell you again, I think you need to give her a break. That was very reasonable to just say, look, you don't get to have all these privileges if you can't give the basic decency of courtesy to the man who lives here and is my husband. Okay. So then you say it was so much pain that your sister left during middle school to live with your dad. Okay. In middle school is painful, and kids very often go live with one parent and then the other. And that's hard, but that's normal. Okay. Nobody is Nobody's the bad guy in something like that. Divorce is the bad guy. Your mom couldn't see it coming. Your dad is the one who made something bad in the marriage. Maybe there was never the ingredients of a good marriage there. I'm not judging them. It happens to half of all marriages. And if you're here like on Crappy Childhood Fairy, like how many of us have parents who are still together, who stayed together till one of them died? Practically nobody, sweetheart. It's part of it, you know? It's part of coming from a hard family. It's part of it. So you went to live with your dad. I never asked what really happened because no one ever talked about these things. And this man would bounce in and out of your home for years, and finally when you were 26, she announced she was marrying him. So it sounds like for 20 years they dated, and you say bounce in and out of the home, but for a single woman, it's okay. It's actually, I could see when you were a child if he was moving in and moving out and moving in and moving out. Maybe you're not telling me about like emotional pain for your mom and stuff, but if that was the case, if she was just all like messed up over him all the time and they were breaking up, yeah, that's a lot of drama. And I'm really sorry you went through that. But it still is not a good reason to live your life resentful. When you were 26, she said she was marrying him. And you show a little mad, sad face there. Why was this happening again? Because she loved him and she wanted to be married to him, and she's an adult and she gets to do that. He had nothing to show for his life. Well, he did. This part hurts my heart, Jill. To say that someone has nothing to show for his life because he doesn't have job, car, place to live, disabled, ex-drug addict, living with his mother. He's a human being. He has everything to show for his life. You're talking about status and material things, and that might, you're like at an age where you have a child and you might be looking for a husband and you want to look for somebody who makes money and who can, you know, support you in a middle-class lifestyle, and that's great. That's a boundary you get to have. But your mom has done just fine for herself with this man who she wants to be married to. And I got to call you on this, Jill. See the humanity in people even if they have no job or no car. They are real people, they have hearts, they have love. And apparently he's quite comforting to your mother, and he stood by her even though her kids have been so hard on him. That's a factor that has broken up many a marriage of people who try to put a life together for themselves after divorce. So I'm happy that she has a partner. I'm sad that he's dying. That's going to be hard for her. So fast forward to now, and they're still married, and now he's sick. Dementia and CPTOD. Oh, that's really hard. CPTOD, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a lung thing. It's very hard to get air, and it's terminal, and he's on oxygen. My mother still holds on to this fantasy of all of us being what I call the Brady Bunch family. I don't blame her. That's a good fantasy for everybody to have family harmony together, for you to love her and accept her husband. This is a joke you were saying. If the Lord Jesus came to earth and told your sister to be friends with her husband, she would not. That's how much the hatred is there. Hate is a terrible thing. And that's why I asked you the question about him. Did he do something wrong? And he didn't. My mom and I have always and still do have a special bond, yet I don't want to become her emotional bestie, handy woman, maid, chef, therapist, hairdresser, or have a fake friendship with her husband. It sounds like you're scared of getting codependent. You said in a little bit later that you're a carbon copy of her. So you're worried about being codependent and getting all enmeshed with her. Okay, good boundary. That's a good boundary to recognize that you need to have. That's your fear. You do the daily practice. So I have fear if I go live at home, I'm going to have to be all these things to her and be all enmeshed with her, and it'll drive me crazy. So there's another option here. You can be kind and loving and have a boundary and not become those things to her. But since you're 47, I'm guessing she's in her 70s, and she's got a husband who's dying and who's got dementia and COPD, and she could use some help. And I think help would, since you're using her to go live with her for help, it would be really appropriate and mature of you to reciprocate and give her help. And helping somebody doesn't have to be enmeshment. It can be a gesture of love and responsibility and duty. And it feels good to be that person. When you give somebody out of love, it feels good. When you give somebody out of trying to keep them from being mad at you, it feels bad. But I'm just hearing in here, I recognize this. I had a very angry relationship with my mom. She died when I was 30. But I had something like this with her. I was just mad at her. I liked my stepdad quite a lot. He's still in my life. But I was mad at her. She was the drinker. And I really, really regret treating her in an angry way during her final years while she had cancer. But it's all I had right then. So I'm just kind of like trying to talk to you as my younger self and say, get that daily practice going. So I got the daily practice like the very week she died, which wasn't a coincidence. I was just really effed up, emotionally. And I was shown a way to get free of all this stuff, and the anger and the sadness came pouring out and pouring out and pouring out. And so without having her alive to talk to, I was able to heal so much of my pain and resentment at my mom about stuff. And you get to do that while she's alive. And I'm just saying, like the situation you're telling me, it would be a great kindness to her to embrace the fact that this is the man she loves, and she's probably going through a lot of grief right now that he's dying and that he's, losing it. That's very sad. You've always had this great relationship. You don't want to get enmeshed. She's always had some jealousy tendencies that have irritated me for years, yet she denies them. If I have a new hairdo or a new dress, and you recently lost 70 pounds, that's fabulous. That indicates a great deal of personal growth. I know losing weight takes focus and personal change, so good for you. That's a sign of health. She will say comments like, "Oh, I want that too," or can you help me lose weight? So I just got to say, I don't hear why you hear that as jealous. I hear that as admiration, and also, just like, gosh, I want to lose weight too. Like, don't you hear that from a lot of people? I know when I had significant weight loss, a lot of people said, "What plan did you use? I want to use that plan." And I took it as a compliment, not jealousy, not jealousy. I question that, whether it's really jealousy. I'm not there. But really, like, get your fears and resentment on paper about that. It doesn't sound like it from what you're describing. Okay. She also has rules for her home, very appropriate. I have rules for my home. And she has a bad habit of micromanaging. She also has expressed that she doesn't understand why the siblings can't see that she needs help around the house. So I guess she feels that you guys don't help her enough. And you say, "I'm all for pitching in, but her demands, entitled mindset, and behaviors can trigger my own CPTSD symptoms to new heights." So I'm not hearing entitlement. And this is one of the other really hard things that I have to say, but I want you to hear it. I think you thinking that you can live there and not help her to the degree that she would like you to help her, that's the entitlement. And I just want to challenge you to see if you can kind of relax that idea that as an older person who's housing you, she actually is legitimately entitled to get some help around the house. It's true. That is it. And conversely, you're not actually entitled to live there or entitled to live there and be unkind to her husband. Okay? I'm just calling it. I hope you can hear this. This might be making you really mad, and I'm just going to have to let that be. But I think this could be life-changing for you to really get this and get it onto the paper. Get to the daily practice calls. Maybe make an appointment with Kara, the coach on our team who can do one-on-ones with people doing the daily practice. That's on the coaching page of my website. But she can help you get to the heart of this resentment so you can bust it open and wash it off and be lighthearted and warm-hearted and open-hearted towards these very precious people in your life. You'll never have them again. So you said you don't want to have a fake friendship with her husband, and you know nothing about him, not even his middle name. I'm going to give you an assignment if you're willing to accept it. Get to know him. Talk to him. If his dementia isn't too far gone, sit down and ask him questions about himself. Spend an hour asking him questions. Let him talk, and don't interrupt. Learn about him. Learn about this guy who loves your mom. You might find out something that opens your heart and gives you empathy for him and helps you see why your mom loves him so much. And I think it would mean a lot to your mom if you would take that time to get to know him. And I'm thinking, my husband and I we just had lunch with my stepdad, and I loved what my husband did. We were chatting away, and my husband was so interested in my stepdad's a really, really interesting person. And but because I was a kid with him, I think I don't see it as easily as my husband did. And my husband was asking him these questions, and the answers were, I was like, really? I didn't know that about you. And having his perspective helped me realize and feel a little bit embarrassed that I hadn't asked those questions myself, about how he grew up and what happened, in his youth, and there, great stories. But that's how, when we give our attention to other people, that's a way to show love. And often I notice that the older people get, and especially like you said with the pandemic and retirement, there's been so much grave isolation, that it's a loving gift to anybody we encounter. If somebody seems to you to be lonely and need an ear to listen to, and you're just hanging out, Do that for them. Do that for them. And use your daily practice to deal with the triggers that come up. Because the triggers that come up, it's a trigger. It's not even necessarily anything that needs to be done anything about. It's a trigger, and you just kind of like relax it by getting the fear and resentment on paper, ask for it to be removed. I'm so glad you have that. I'm so glad you have that, Jill. Okay. You say you're a carbon copy of your mom, minus the indecisiveness and micromanagement. Okay, so good. You probably have your own things, right? We all do. And you don't want to be made to feel guilty for living your life. And you talk about going out on weekends, talking on the phone after 9, or not wanting to cook for her husband, like they're one big happy family. Okay, the first two, talking on the phone after 9, not going out on weekends, sound like teenage things. And so if your mom is still doing that to you as an adult when you're there and you're kind and polite, I think you can set a very polite boundary and say, Mom, sorry, I need a little downtime of my own. But you have a 4-year-old kid. You have a 4-year-old kid, and so what I'm wondering, I didn't hear this, are you expecting them to babysit, and is that more than she can do right now? That's a piece that you missed right there. So I want to bring your attention to that maybe if you're going out on weekends, you might need to find another arrangement. I don't know, maybe they help you. If you're just saying, I don't want to be treated like a child, oh, this is going to sound mean, but you got to act like an adult. You have to be that loving, helpful person. And when a mother is in their 70s and a daughter is in their 40s, the roles are reversed now. You're the one who should be providing the extra care. That's just the natural order of things. So I think you'll find you have a lot more harmony when you show up with love. And I get it, you know, her boundaries are crap. The enmeshment is really uncomfortable. But you're in a special group of people now, of people who have tools for how to deal with that. So I encourage you to give it a try. Then you say, I don't want to cook for her husband like we're one big happy family. If you can't live there and cook for her husband, and you just want to be selective about that and cook for yourself or just for your mom, I don't think you should go there. I think that's so hostile and so unkind that you shouldn't go there. I think they're going through a lot right now with his illness. Your mom's lonely. It'd be nice if you could stay nearby, but I don't think you should bring that kind of stress in the house. I know if I were in your mother's shoes, that would be so upsetting. It would just break me. I couldn't do it. I'm sure she's in a lot of grief right now and pain, and I wouldn't do that to her. It's not fair. You said that she's very excited for you to come home. She's been very isolated, sick husband, pandemic, etc. And you want to enjoy your time with her while you're there. However, you're just starting your own healing journey and have incorporated the daily practice. And I hear you. And I would say if they were fine and they could be expected for everything to just stay status quo for a long time, I would say, don't go there, go stay somewhere else. But the reason why I think you might want to just kind of buck up and use your daily practice twice a day and meditate and get a buddy and go to daily practice meetings and do all of that is so that you can show up and go be helpful and supportive of your mom at this hard time. And you would have the added benefit of saving some money as a single mom. I'm sure that's very valuable to you. And you might just grow much closer to your mom. It can be very healing to be close to heal from all those resentments. And you can actually get free of resentments and fears quite quickly if you have a mind to do it through the daily practice. So I'd really encourage you, like dive in. If you go into the membership program with me, there's a Facebook group where there's like peer-led daily practice calls all day long, like 3 or 4 a day, all over the world at different times. You can join in. There's a lot of support for people who are doing just what you're doing. They're trying to heal their lives. They're trying to calm their triggers. There's a place for this, okay? So you were asking, how do I set healthy age-appropriate boundaries with her, as she's big on children being respectful and honoring to their parents. So she's setting a boundary with you. You need to be respectful and honor the parents. Can you do it? I would just say, if you cannot respect and honor and be kind to them, don't go. That's not fair. That's her boundary. And you know she's weak on boundaries, but those are her boundaries. Don't take advantage of her just because she doesn't kick you out for being unkind. Don't take advantage. I really encourage you, show up with love. Show up with love and forgiveness and an open heart, and just like, see if you can soften your heart towards them. See if you can soften up a little bit. It feels good. It feels good to just soften up and go, you know what, this is okay. And these people aren't going to be on earth very long, and it's a nice thing you're doing if you can go hang out and just show up with love and acceptance. Everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants to be seen and heard and loved and accepted just as they are, and so do you. And sometimes you can't get that from people in the way that you want, but you can give it to people. And it's always worth doing if you can. okay? If you can hold your own boundaries. So you say, I don't want a repeat of Christmas a few years back when she said she did so much for us. And I stepped in as I'm grateful, and you cleaned up, but she couldn't do that. You know, I've done that. Yeah, it sounds like she got flustered and dysregulated, and she was resentful and hurt about who was cleaning up, and she felt taken advantage of. And you know what? I'm a mom of young adults, and I feel the same way sometimes. And there's probably been times I did the dishes. I was just, it's always me. I have to do everything. That's like my lot in life. But when I'm on that mantra, I know I need to sit down and write. So I have tools. Your mom does not. Who knows? Maybe she'll pick it up from you. Maybe. Don't force it. I've never had luck forcing it on anybody. And then she continued to help out or micromanage by telling you how to sweep the floor. Yeah, you know, it's how it is. Later that evening, I walked into her room with cake, and she didn't ask right out if she could have a piece. She said, "Ooh, I want some cake," in a childlike voice. So you say you got triggered, and it's like, yeah, that sounds like your trigger. It's just, in my scheme of things, that's like not that big a deal, but I empathize with you because I know what it's like to be kind of fed up with a certain energy with somebody, and that's what it sounds like it is with you. It's like it's a certain energy that you don't like, but you have no choice but to accept. You can't change her. You can leave, you can hang out. If you hang out, I encourage you just to accept. Just accept her as she is. See her, hear her, love her, accept her. It'll be so relaxing for her, and relaxed people who feel accepted are less likely to go into their passive-aggressive behavior. They might still do it, but there's the thing. That's the catch of people. It's like, we can't control them, okay? So the Father's Day thing, and she said that thing, you didn't say Happy Father's Day, and you said you had an emotional flashback. I can't imagine an emotional flashback about that, but I'm just trying to understand what that was. Is that it just sounds like there was tension between them, and she felt like she had to stand up for him, and it was awkward and weird. But you know what? If what they want is for you to say Happy Father's Day, say Happy Father's Day. Just give the love, give the kindness, help out where you can. It's nothing to say Happy Father's Day. I say it to my stepdad, and my kids say it to their stepdad, and their stepmom and I are celebrating our birthdays together soon. Like, love is good. It's good to have a loving extended family. It's a very positive thing. And if people are not abusive, you have a huge opportunity with you. So you said, please help me before I lose it. I hope this helps. This is one of the toughest love videos that I've made before, and I hope you feel the love in it. I identify with you. I want to save you a lot of the grief that I went through from being hard-hearted towards people in my life. I'm so grateful to have the people in my life, even the characters. It's good to have people to celebrate holidays with and to help each other in their time of need and just to be together. It's a very positive thing. So I send you my love, and I hope you find strength in doing this. And come see us in the Daily Practice Call. I do them twice a month. They're free for anybody who's taken the Daily Practice course. And if anybody here loves this topic and they're thinking, is it just me? I have this video, and this is not a comment on you, Jill, but it's a comment on looking at our own behavior sometimes, because sometimes CPTSD can have narcissistic traits, not narcissistic personality. But this is a video that hits pretty hard on how to look at oneself and just see, am I doing things that make things hard on others? And I've got that video lined up right here. Woo! And I'll see you very soon.